first, let me start with creating a job. So here we are going to start with creating a freestyle job. Okay. Prior to that, let me just explain you what are all the fields available in a freestyle job, and then we have to create a repo in GitHub. Okay, and then we will create a key pair and we will exchange the key pair. All those things will come back. We'll do that as a lab. Okay. First, let me walk you through what are all the options you will see when creating a freestyle project. So let's do that first. So the first option I'm going to do is, so when I create a job, I need to give a name for the job. We call it as a text. Okay. So these are all the multiple options you can see for the job. Okay. So the first one is a freestyle job. This is where you are going to configure all the options in a UI. Okay. Next is the pipeline. We are going to see, as I talked about, you can write a instruction in the Groovy language, and that instruction can be stored in the repo. So that is what called as a pipeline job. Okay. And next is in your multi-configuration project, like for environment specific, you are going to have different configuration, then you can use it. The multi-configuration project. Folder is something kind of a similar to your views, where you can club 4 or 5 jobs under a folder that you can use it. And then GitHub organization is like you can scan the complete GitHub organization, and for all the repositories for some defined markers, you can do that. Or multi-branch pipeline is like, so it can automatically detect branches of a repo. For every branch, the job will be executed. So this option also you can use it. So first, let me start with the freestyle project, and let's see what has happened. What are the options I see here? Okay, in the freestyle, I basically have 6 different options. Okay, we go one by one. So the first section is called the general section. In the general section, we'll be providing the information, basic information about the job. Okay, right? Like what is the description about the job? Okay, and whether it is a GitHub project or not, and whether this job needs any lockable resource or anything. So those kind of information you will provide it. And in the source code management, you will be providing from which source code system, source control system, I need the repo should be pulled, okay, which branch should be pulled. So those kind of information you can define in the source control management. And the next option is your build triggers. Build triggers is majorly to say like how the job has to be triggered, whether it should be based on a webhook or I'm going to schedule it on every day at 10 o'clock or those kind of things. We will see that. We'll see for every option, we'll see example. And next is the build environment. So this is where I'm going to get the build environment ready. Like for example, if I want to use any secrets, or if I want to use any variables, or if I want to clean the workspace. So those kind of activities we will see in the build environment section. And next is the build section. This is the area where your actual build will happen. So let's say if I want to run a Maven code, Maven build, those kind of things I will do it. Or if I want to do a Docker build, actually I'll be giving the build commands here only. And in a deployment stage, like for example, if I want to deploy the application, I'll be using the Kubernetes deploy command using the build stage. So in the general section, I can write a small description about this. The next concept is called discard old build. Okay. So prior to go into this, if you go to the Jenkins, okay. So just do a sudo su cd/var lib Jenkins. Excuse me. So Jenkins doesn't use any database or anything to store the configuration. So everything is stored as a file in Jenkins. Like if you see, there is a one important file called config.xml. So if I read the file, I will see all the configuration which I see now. So the number of executors, didn't I save the changes? So you see that the number of executors is 2, right? So if I'll come back to this job later. In the manage Jenkins, in the configure system, let me change it to 5. And if I save this, and if I come back and read the file again, you can see it is getting updated. In the same way, I can modify this file here. Okay, let me say change it to 2. The config.xml under the varlib Jenkins, and then if I go to my manage Jenkins and reload the configuration of the disk, now if I see the manage Jenkins, it will be back to 2. You see, so Jenkins doesn't use any database or anything. Everything is stored as individual files inside the directory. Okay, and when I create some jobs, there will be a jobs directory will be created. You see, I have created a job with the test. All the configurations inside the job will be stored as XML. If you see that, for every job, there will be a config XML. Okay, and for every build, there will be a build directory which will be created. I'll show you. CD builds. So mine currently it is empty. Okay. When I run the job, I will see build directory will be created. Okay. So as this is storing everything as a file, when the number of jobs and the number of builds are increasing, your Jenkins system tend to perform slow because everything is going to come from this file system. When I have more files to scan and display the things in the UI, it will take a longer time to display things. So the best approach or a best practice is whenever you are having a job, okay, define a removal strategy. That means you can discard old builds. There you can say, use the log rotation strategy, and you can say how many days I want to keep the builds. Like for example, I would like to say delete all the build logs which are older than 10 days, or delete logs which are either I can define it based on the days or number of the builds. That's what you are seeing here. And in Jenkins, you are seeing an option, and if you want to get more information about the particular option, you can use the question mark icon. It is going to provide a write-up about that. Okay. So this will be a self-explanatory write-up. You can just refer that. So this is the first option. How many days of build history I need to keep? Either days or maximum number of builds I can do it. And if I want to keep the artifacts is nothing but whenever I build it, I'll be storing the artifact. The artifact may be your test report, or it can be the binary file which you're creating after building the application. So those kind of things you can define how many days I need to keep the artifacts. Okay. So I'm not going to change it. I'm just giving you the option. Okay. And next is if the build requires any lockable resource, I can define the lockable resource name and the label. Okay. And next is if the build requires a parameter, let's say I should give the user option to select the branch while building it. So I can do it, but for that I need to use a parameter. There are multiple parameters available. One is called as a choice parameter. That means you can choose multiple choice and do that. Okay. And you can also give a file parameter, string parameter. We'll see examples of everything here. Okay. So this is where you can tell if I want to pass any parameter for the particular job. Okay. And then throttle build is like, this is something, let's say I have a job. I am saying that every hour this job should be executed only once. Then I can do it with the throttle build concept. So I can say, if I say that 1 hour, Okay, it will allow only one build per hour. So if any other request comes in, it will keep it in the queue. Only in the next hour, it is going to trigger the build. Okay, so that is the example of a throttle build. And if I'm making some changes to the job, I don't want this job to be mistakenly triggered, then you can use the disable this project. And then by default, Jenkins will not run concurrent builds. Okay, if you want to enable concurrent builds, that means the job cannot be run twice at the same time. If you want to do that, you can enable that. And next is, what is the quiet period? These are the default things which is coming in the configure. We have seen it's 5 seconds. If you want to provide a different quiet period for this job, you can do it. And the retry count. Okay, so SCM retry count, which we already seen. If you want to change it for this particular job, you can do it. And then if you want to block this build, because for a job there will be a upstream and downstream. When the upstream is running, I don't want this job to be triggered, then I can say this option here. Like the same way, when the downstream is running, I don't want this job to trigger, I can say that. And next is custom workspace. So in a Jenkins, there I need a workspace to work, right? Like for example, if I ask it to pull a source code and there it should do the build and all those stuffs, it needs a directory in which it will be pulling the code, right? So for every job, there will be a workspace created. I haven't executed any job till now. So there is no workspace directory has been created now. Okay. If I run a job, the workspace directory will be created. Instead of using the default workspace, it should use a different workspace. Then you can use the custom workspace option here. Okay. We'll see that. So these are all the default options you can see in the general section. And next is your source code management. So this is where we are going to provide the from which repository I want it to do. Okay. Currently I have a plugin installed for Git only. If I have a SVN system, okay, so I need to install the plugin for SVN. I will see the SVN option also here. So I have a Git plugin installed, so I can provide the URL from where the Git repo is hosted, and I can provide the credentials to download it, and I can specify what is the branch I want it to pull it. So you can give additional options like what should be the name, what should be the ref spec, all those things you can just do it. So if you want to pull multiple repositories at the same time, you can also do that also. We have talked about the general and source code management area. So this is where we normally provide the source code information. So the next area is the build triggers. So this is where I'm going to talk about how this job has to be triggered. Okay, so there are multiple options available. One is trigger builds remotely. So I can generate a token for this. Okay, that token name, I can pass it to the build trigger. So for example, if I want to build this job remotely, it's from another machine, I can provide the Jenkins URL and the job test, and token is equal to, let's say I'm naming this token as test job. So I need to provide the token name, then the job will be built. This is to trigger the jobs remotely. Okay. Or otherwise I can say, I can define the upstream job saying that when the previous job completed, I want this job to be triggered. Like let's say, once the git pull is completed, I want the build job to be triggered automatically. This is where I can define the upstream job for this particular job. Or otherwise, I can say, I want it to run build periodically. This is also going to use the similar cron structure, which you have seen in the cron job option of Kubernetes. So there will be 5 stars. I can just provide it. We'll see an example there. Okay, this is the option on build periodically. Next is webhook. So we'll see a configuration. Webhook is a concept where whenever there is a commit happened on a particular job, I want this job to be, whenever a commit happened on a particular branch, I want this job to be triggered, then I can use this webhook concept. Then we will see about that. And next is the Poll SCM. Poll SCM is something similar to schedule, but the difference is this is going to trigger a new build only when there is a commit on the particular branch. We'll see that example in the relative way. Okay, so this is all the build trigger option available. And next is the build environment. So this is where I'm going to prepare the environment for the build. Like if I want to delete a workspace before the build start, I can do that here. Okay, and if I want to use a secret, okay, I can just create a existing secret file and I can use it. I can pass it here. Okay, and next is like this is where I can define a timeout for my job. Like for example, I want this job to be considered failure if it is running more than 3 minutes. So there may be scenarios like long running jobs are possible in Jenkins. In this case, I can use this. I can say if the job is running more than like say 30 minutes, I want this job to be considered as a failure and aborted. I can use this. And then next is if I want to print the timestamp in the log build output, I can see this here. And then inspect the build log. Okay. So if I want to inspect the build log and I want to publish it the build scan, I can use it. Or if I want to use an ant environment, I can use this here. Okay. And this is the build environment step. And next section is this is where based on my plugin, I will see additional options. So the default option is if I want to execute a batch command, I can use this. Or if I want to execute a shell command, I can do it. Or if I want to invoke a Maven target, I can do it. Or ant or Gradle, I can do it. Or if I want to run it with a timeout strategy, I can define this. So whatever step I wanted, I can just add it here as a build step. And then in the post build action, I'll be able to archive the artifact. Imagine like I create in binary file. So I want to archive the binary file, I can do it. Okay. Or if I want to call another job, I can use that also. Or next is I want to publish the JUnit test result, right? So imagine I'm running a unit testing as part of my Maven, and that is going to create a JUnit report, XML report. I want to publish that, I can see that. Okay. Or if I want to send an email notification, I'm able to provide that. We'll see this option. Okay. And if I want to delete the workspace when the build is done, I can also do this here. So these are all the options. You can see it in the 6 sections: general, source code management, build a trigger, build environment, build and post build action. Let us start building a job. Okay. So for that, if you have a GitHub account, just go to this repo and fork this repo. Because this is a Java-based application. This is what we are going to use to build and publish results as a sample. And then in the top, you will see the option for fork. Just fork this repo. So while you guys are forking this, I will tell you some of the options in the GitHub. Okay. So in the GitHub, you can add a credentials via which you will be able to pull and push to the particular repo. Okay. You can add the credentials in 2 sections. Okay. One is on the account level, you can add it. So that option, you can see it here in the top right corner, you'll see a profile. There in the settings, you will see an option called SSH and GPG keys. Okay. Here also you can add a SSH key. So it also uses the same concept of key-based authentication. Okay. With this, you can use that. This is one option. Or otherwise, in the repo level also, you can add it. Okay. So let's say, so in the repo level, in the settings, you are allowed to add the deploy keys. There you can add a key. Okay. So for our lab, let us add the key on the account level. Okay. And we'll configure the webhook for the repo level, because will be doing at least 2 or 3 repos. So I don't want to, every time I don't want to come and add this key here. So let's add the key on the profile level, that is user profile level. Go to your user, click on settings, and there go to the SSH and GPG keys. I have some older keys. Let me delete them. Okay. Now let me go back to the Jenkins machine. There, let me create a key pair. Okay. So let me do this. Just run the command who am I. So I should be as a CentOS user. And to generate a key pair in Linux, the command is ssh-keygen. So this command will generate a public key and private key pair. So where the private key I'm going to configure it on my Jenkins, and public key I'll be storing it on my GitHub. So that's what we are going to do. First, let us do the ssh-keygen. Okay. It is going to say where you want me to store the key pair. Normally, it will be stored under the user's home directory. There will be a .ssh directory. Inside that, 2 files will be created. One will be called as IDRSA, and another, that is my private key, and another is my IDRSA.pub, that is the public key. So I'm not going to change the location, just give enter. So the next step, it is going to ask whether you want to protect your private key with a password. I don't want to protect it with any password. Press enter. And then it is asking me to enter the same password again. So I'm giving a empty passphrase. So press the enter again. So this will create 2 files. One is IDRSA and another one is IDRSA.pub. So let's read the content of both the files. So give the command cat of the IDRSA.pub. So I see 2 contents. Let me share both the commands. Once you run the ssh-keygen, run these 2 commands. Will come and add the private key in the credentials. So now I am going to store the public key, that is .pub, on my GitHub. So copy the complete content starting from the SSH RSA to that .internal. So I'm copying that, then going to my GitHub, clicking on settings, profile settings, clicking on SSH and GPG key, and I'm going to add new SSH key, and in the title, I'm going to call it as Jenkins, and in the key file, I'm going to paste it. Let's add the SSH key. Password. Yeah. So I have added the key to my GitHub account. So the public key is added to the GitHub account. Next, I need to tell my Jenkins that you should use this private key to pull the source code. That is where I'm going to configure them in the credentials part. In Jenkins, we have seen a credentials, right? I'm going to create a credentials. There I'll be storing my private key. So next thing is I'm going to my Jenkins and click on manage Jenkins and manage credentials. And you will see a Jenkins, click on that, and then global credential. Let me repeat, manage Jenkins, manage credential, Jenkins, global credential. There I'm going to click on add credentials, and the kind is SSH username with private key. Okay. So the ID, I'm going to name it as GitHub. Description, it's not mandate. Username is Git. And in the private key field, click on enter directly, and there, let me copy paste the complete private key content, starting from the begin RSA private key to end RSA private key. Complete file, I'm copying it, I'm pasting it here, and then click OK. So let me repeat, add a credential. In the drop down, select SH username with private key, ID, name it as GitHub, username is Git, and enter directly. Click on add and paste the private key file. So now this underlying mission doesn't have Git installed. Okay, so Jenkins is not coming up with the Git tool. Okay, so you need to install the Git manually on the underlying mission. Let's install Git. So sudo yum install git -y. So let's run this command. This will install Git on your mission. Okay. So now let me delete this project and create a fresh one. Go to the dashboard and click on new item. And let me call it as first job and freestyle project, and click OK. There, let's just run this job to pull the source from the Git. So directly I'm going into the source control management. There in the repository URL, go to the repo which you have cloned, that is forked. Okay. So let's see. This is repo. Jenkins repo. There in the code field, you will get the clone option. In the clone, select SSH option and click on the copy icon, and then put the URL here. So going to the forked repo, in the code, select SSH and click on the copy icon and paste it here. And when you put that, you will get an error saying that host key verification failed and all those things. So now in the credentials, in the drop down, select the Git option. Once you select that, this error will be going away. So creating a new job called first job, and in the source control management, I'm giving the repository URL, and in the credentials, I'm selecting the Git credential, which I created just now. Okay. And the default branch to build is master. So I have a master branch available. So we are good. So let me save this. And then once you save it, you will see the project page. In the project page, there are options there. We'll come back and see what all the options are available. So there you will see an option called build now. Click on the build now. And in the bottom, you can see there is a build number 1 has been created. And you can see a tick mark. That means the job has completed successfully.